Hello, Seicharat. You know that feeling of frustration that you get when you come out of a meeting that could have been resolved with a simple email? It's a waste of time. Similarly, you have probably got to the end of books and thought that the main ideas could have been explained in just a few paragraphs. Now, for people that still have not gotten to the habit of reading, the biggest challenge is simply starting a book. However, for the small group that already has made reading part of their daily routine, the next challenge is to not spend all their time reading unimportant pages. There's so many books that don't need to be read cover to cover. You need to learn how to skip the parts that don't add any value. Now, on the other hand, there are some great works of literature, classic novels that really do deserve to be read page by page. On the other hand, it is generally inefficient to read technical, non-fiction books from start to finish. You need to learn how to skip the pages that don't add any value or information that you need to know. The majority of current non-fiction bestsellers contain just one truly important idea. However, to turn it into something worth selling, the editors and the authors transform a 10-page idea into a 200-page book. Once you have learned how to identify books like this, you will stop wasting time reading them from cover to cover. Learn to identify the books that do not deserve to be read in full. It is a waste of time to read some types of books without a strategic plan. It is particularly with the non-fiction books that you need to take extra care with. These are generally classified as business books, personal development, or self-help books. The strategic plan should start with you understanding what is the purpose of you reading that particular book. Do you just want to enjoy your free time and then you think that that book will provide you with some entertainment? Or perhaps you have a specific problem in your life that you would like to overcome, or some dream or some goal that you would like to reach. You see, fiction book sales have decreased in the recent years, and the non-fiction sales have increased. So it is safe to say that people are increasingly turning to books to look for concrete results from reading. And if that is your case, you need to learn how to recognize a book that is not worth reading from start to finish. Improving reading habits is a gradual process. First, you need to develop the habit of reading frequently, as most people do not do this. So, if you already have the habit of reading non-fiction books from start to finish, well, congratulations. Now it's time for you to take one step further and acquire an intelligent reading habit. Using intelligent reading, you will quickly notice that a lot of books contain verbosity, especially the ones that are on the best-selling list. A lot of them could be reduced to an article with just a few pages. And that is why you need to read these types of books in an intelligent way, not wasting any time, getting directly to the point. Notice how these books generally have one solid central idea. However, the author keeps telling stories about how they discovered that idea, and they are giving examples of how it can be applied to basically prove that the idea actually makes sense. This is what increases the number of pages, transforming that one idea into a book that is perfect for selling. This is not done just to make the book more bulky or impressive. A lot of what you find in these books is personal marketing by the author. They make a point of describing how they came from a difficult childhood, how they faced so many problems, and how in the end, they're just like you. This is a technique used to make the author more charismatic, and it's executed specifically so that you identify with the author and then you believe that you can follow the same steps as them and achieve the same results. There is even specific training for authors, for speakers, on how they can integrate the hero's journey structure to become even more popular. Now pay attention and you will notice that many best-selling non-fiction books about a certain company, its products or CEO, are published just a little bit before the IPO. In other words, it is a very well-planned process of recruiting writers and editors that write well, and together with a team they come up with an orchestrated campaign to launch the book. This type of book is just one step in the marketing of a wider project. So, of course, they add loads of chapters about how the company is so amazing. They have this unique selling point. It makes the company more impressive in the popular imagination. It helps to leverage the stock price when the company finally becomes available to the general public. Business books are also given extra pages when the editors decide to adapt the main ideas to different areas of knowledge to make it relevant to specific university courses. For example, imagine a book with one idea, a unique practical technique to help people become more productive. That technique could be taught in 2 chapters. However, the book contains 20 more chapters teaching you how to use this technique to make a business more efficient, how to improve your urbanization in large cities, how to increase the speed of public transportation, or how basketball teams which use this technique usually win more championships, how hospitals could use it to be more efficient, how it can help to prevent global warming, and much more. Might be true that it is possible to use that productivity technique in so many different situations. There's always a certain level of exaggeration. In addition, it might be easier for you to learn the main idea once you read it being applied in so many different areas, but the problem is that you are not the person responsible for the urbanization of cities or public transport. You're not the manager of a basketball team or a hospital, I guess. So in other words, you are learning very little when you're reading about so many details which are not even remotely related to your situation. You just want to learn about the productivity technique in order to become more efficient and free up a little bit of time in your daily life. And then the irony is that when you read the whole book, you actually waste time. When you realize this, you will gain clarity and you will be able to get the most out of a book in the least amount of time. Always remember also to implement what you read. You are wasting time when you open a book without a plan. By doing this, you're just following the plan of the person who wrote the book. You need to make your own plan. Every time you come across information that is not useful for you, it is better to speed up your reading. Your reading is optimized when it brings practical value to your objectives. Intelligent reading achieves maximum results in a minimum amount of time. There are trends on the internet, I know, where you let people know how many books you've been reading in a given week. You can publish photos of stacks of books that you have read on your social media. You can appear on video calls with a full bookshelf in the background. Now beware of vanity, as it can confuse you. It can keep you from achieving real growth. Instead of being proud of how many books you have read, how many pages you can read per minute, or how many likes the photo of the last book you posted has, try to understand the value that books can bring to your life. In the case of non-fiction books, which is what we're discussing here, the value of a good book is the practical results that you can use in your life. It is what you implement to make useful changes in your life. Let me give an example, which is a little exaggerated, but just to make it clear. The inefficient way to read a book like The 7 Habits of the Highly Effective People is to read each one of the 500 pages, but then not implement anything that you learned, not profit in your productivity. It doesn't matter what you read, what matters is how you use what you read. The efficient way to read is to be investigative while you're reading. Have a book at the index and write down what the 7 habits are. This helps you to get straight to the point and quickly figure out what the central idea of each habit is. And by doing this, you skip everything that is basically not useful. Think carefully about the behavioral changes that you could make to implement these 7 habits. Change the way in which you communicate with others. Modify how you plan your week to achieve your goals. Implement a new daily activity every morning in order to change your behavior. And if it's something that is not actually working in practice, you can always go back to the specific point in the book to find out what's going on. And maybe you could use a book like a tool, like a recipe book, that you consult whenever you need to. That is how you gain productivity without having to read every single page. In the Intelligence at Art Academy, we have a specific lesson that teaches you how to read better with the intent of understanding, retaining, and applying what you read. You should not be a slave to the book. The book should be a slave to you. Take care to not fetishize books. A fetish is when you assign magical powers to a simple object. Non-fiction books are just tools that are there to serve your personal goals. The words in books can be skipped, can be crossed out, can be written on, summarized, and even discard it. Obviously, only when you own the book, right? We cannot do this with a book from the library or one that you borrowed from someone else. In a close reading, you might realize that the author is simply going on and on, trying to tell stories to impress you, or repeating ideas that were already explained. In these cases, you should not feel obliged to keep reading page by page. You can skip everything that is not worthy of your time. If you need it, you can even abandon the book before the end. Instead of wasting your life reading things cover to cover, you can just use that extra time to apply what you have learned to your day-to-day. In the Intelligence at Art Academy, we practice pre-reading together in order to identify the main idea of a book from the very start, as well as the main points and what kind of reading you should be doing. Techniques like this will help you to create an intelligent reading habit and even allow you to identify the rare non-fiction books that deserve to be read from beginning to end. Reading is one of the best habits that you can develop. However, reading non-fiction books cover to cover is usually a waste of time that could be slowing down your life. If a book's main idea could be learned in 10 pages, it does not make sense to spend the time reading 200 pages full of stories, repetitions, and pure marketing. Instead, use your time to put into practice what you learn. For those of you who want books to help you reach your goals, and not the contrary, I invite you to take part in the Intelligence at Art Academy training, in which we will have access to short exercises and also tests to master the 4 levels of reading, and you can enroll in the course right now by going to arata.se/intelligence.